It's a very special floor. I hope you all rested well last night. You're going to need it today. We're going to have a little extra walking today. Hanumandara was a warm-up. Today, there will be circumambulation around a mountain. Not Govardhan. It's too far away and that would take the whole day. So this is a 5-kilometer circumambulation of Giri. Giri means mountain, and Kamad indicates, Kama is desire. Kamad is by circumambulation of this mountain, all one's desires, better watch out what your desires are, all one's desires are fulfilled, at least the spiritual ones. This Giri, the local people have their way of glorifying in hyperbole everything, but it's the original Chitrakoot in their estimation, and around the parikrama path, pilgrims that come to Chitrakoot and do the circumambulation, there are many temples, different temples, and pilgrims often stop at those different temples. And we're going to be mentioning some of them, which we're not going to visit, but the main deity of the whole of Chitrakoot is located here. Kamta Nath. Kamta Nath is the name of the deity of Lord Ramachandra, and Sita is by his side. So not only the deity of Giri, but the deity of Chitrakoot, the larger area of Chitrakoot. And from the temple, one can have a nice view of the Vindhya hills. Chitrakoot is at the northern end. It's a series of mountains. At the northern end of the Vindhya range of mountains, the Vindhya range of mountains extend in Uttar Pradesh through Madhya Pradesh, and we hear about them often in Vedic literature. So, Giri, the mountain which fulfills desires. The parikrama path was reconstructed by a king and queen, and in 1725 it was renovated or made to look like it looks, much better, and then the temples were established thereafter. Some of the other places, some of which we will be visiting. One of them is Spatika Shila. Spatika is a name that indicates a particular type of stone. Spatika stone is a quartz, crystal-looking stone. That's the spatika part. And Shila means a stone. So it's a stone not far, a kilometer upstream from Janaki Kund, along the banks of the Mandakini River. And this Spatika Shila is said to be a place where Ram and Sita they'd like to go just because of the beauty of the place and the particulars of the stone. And they would rest there, sit in a relaxed way. There's something that looks like it might be, and they say it is, the footprints of Sita and Ram and the son of Indra, Jayanta. So Jayanta is the name of Indra's son. Indra's son Jayanta wanted to examine the power of Lord Ram. And so he devised a plan. He assumed the form of a crow, which took place at this Spatika Shila. Sita and Ram were relaxing. The crow started to peck at the body of Sita. Ram saw. Ram fired an arrow. He was sitting in a virasana posture and somehow didn't break his posture. He just fired an arrow at the crow, Jayanta. And Jayanta fled here and there and everywhere, and no escape from the arrow. And so he came back to the lotus feet of Ram, begging Ram's pardon. Ram forgave him, but the arrow had to contact something, so it broke one of his eyes. He became blind in one eye. And this pastime was later narrated by Sita to Hanuman, because it was nobody knew about it but those two, Sita and Ram. So when Sita wanted Hanuman to be able to confirm with Ram that Sita was found, she gave a ring and she told the story. Just tell him the story and you'll know that because nobody else knows. So Sita narrated the story about Jayanta, the crow, in the form of a crow. There's a temple of Lord Shiva, according to the Puranas. During one Satya Yuga, Lord Brahma came to this place, Chitrakoot, and he offered penance. And during that period of time, offering penance, he established a deity of Lord Shiva that would protect Chitrakoot, the Dham. The term in Sanskrit is Kshetra Palana. Pala means protection, so the protector of the Dham, Lord Shiva. And the deity of Lord Shiva is called Mataga Jendreshwar. Mataga Jendreshwar. We won't visit that temple, but it's one of the places pilgrims commonly visit. Two other places that we're not going to visit, but there's a place commemorating where Bharata approached Ram and petitioned Ram to come back and become the king. It's called Bharata Milap. and it's on the back side of the hill. And then a little further distance away is up on the hill, a place where it is said that Lakshmana, when standing guard over Sita and Ram, that was his vantage point. So it's called Lakshmana Pahadi. Lakshmana Pahadi. That's another place we're not going to go. And some distance, 20 kilometers from the place where Atri and Anasuya performed austerities, if you remember from yesterday, a number of personalities, great rishis, performed austerities here. Atri and Anasuya is one of their places. 20 kilometers southeast is the place of their ashram, is the ashram of Sharabhanga. Those of you that are familiar with Valmiki Ramayana, you know that after Bharata's departure back to Ayodhya, Ram was feeling unsettled. It was very painful for him to have had that experience with Bharata, although he was firm in his determination. It was disturbing. And also he felt, this is too close to Ayodhya. If I stay here, people will come here and try to hang out. And so he decided to leave Chitrakoot. The first place he went to was the hermitage of Atri and Anasuya. And then Atri and Anasuya invited him to stay. He said, I must go, same as he said to Bharadwaj. And then was the confrontation with the first Rakshasa in the forest, was Virad. That encounter, Virad tried to kidnap Sita. Of course, it didn't work. Virad ended up dead. Long, nice description how that happened. And then next was the encounter with the sage Sharabhanga. Now the sage Sharabhanga was a renowned person. In his ashram were many others who were looking to him as their leader. And Indra came, according to Ramayana, Indra came to visit Sharabhanga and invited him, you come with me and I will take you to heaven. And Sharabhanga said, I'm expecting that Ram will be coming, so I don't want to go to heaven. I want to wait for Ram. Ramayana says that Sita, Ram, and Lakshman, they saw a celestial chariot, effulgent and not even touching the ground, and an amazingly opulent personality, having a discussion with a sage off in the forest. And Ram said, maybe this is some trick of the Rakshasas. Lakshman, you stay here with Sita, I'm going to see what it is. So he went forward. Suddenly, the majestic-looking personality, seeing Ram come, left, took his chariot and went away. And Sharabhanga approached him, explained to Ram, who was that? It's Indra was inviting me to come back with him to heaven, but I wanted to have your association. And then we saw you, so he left. And Sharabhanga invited the three to come to his hermitage, and nice accommodation and treatment and hospitality and everything. Sharabanga then said, I want to leave my body in your presence. So he sat down in a trance of meditation, and his body burst into flames, and Ram saw the form of Sharabanga ascending into the sky as he was thinking of Ram when leaving his body. So didn't stop at heaven, he went back to Godhead. So the hermitage of Sharabanga is in this area, not so far. Then there's the kitchen of Sita. We heard yesterday that near Hanuman Dhara is what's considered to be Sita's kitchen. It's about 100 feet from Hanuman Dhara, and we're not going to go there, but it's like Hanuman Dhara. It's up on a hill, and there's a place where apparently it looks like a stream used to run. So, and they have everything set up very nicely as Sita's kitchen. You know, rolling pin and everything. At least it's commemorating the place where Sita prepared meals for Ram and Lakshman. Now so it's called Sita Rasoi, and there are many, as mentioned before, places that have, they claim to be Valmiki ashrams. There's about 50 of them throughout India. And each of them have a Sita Rasoi. And each of them have a flag. And the flag has markings that indicate Lava and Kusha. And because they all want to say, this is where Lava and Kusha were born. No, this is where Lava and Kusha was born. No, this is... You know how it is. A little competition. But we know from Valmiki Ramayana that one of the places that Ram visited just before he took his residence in Chitrakoot was the ashram of Valmiki. Ram was directed to or advised when Bharadraj was requested, can you suggest a place? It was Chitrakoot. He followed the direction that was given to him by Bharadraj. They walked along the bank of the river Jamuna. They crossed the river Jamuna and reached a place that is now known as Ramnagar. Ramnagar is the birthplace of Tulsidas. We're going to hear something about his life, simple version. And then from there, Ram went to Valmiki's ashram. Valmiki invited them to stay for the night, and then they found their place, and Lakshman built a cottage, and that's where they stayed. So, we mentioned this when we visited Bittur. In Bittur they say, this is where Valmiki Ramayana is written, and this is where Lava and Kusha were born, and this is where Sita was sent, and over here they say the same. We're going to spend a little bit of time describing the life of Tulsidas. in part because his notoriety in composing Ram Charita Manas is renowned, and he spent substantial time in this area, most of his life, not all, and so we're going to just speak something about him. When devotees refer to Prabhupada's comments about Ramcharita Manas, Prabhupada sometimes called Tulsi Ramayan, Prabhupada said some strong things, negative, and at other times he said some nice things, positive. Prabhupada wanted us to focus upon Valmiki Ramayana as fully authentic. The specific mention that Prabhupada made of concern with Ramcharitamanas is there are, I'm not familiar with it so I can't say where, but apparently there are some places that are explicitly impersonal, although the devotion of Tulsi Das was outstanding. But because of that, Prabhupada cautioned reading his version. There are ISKCON devotees that grow up with Ramcharitamanas, and that's what they know, and that's what they speak from, and I'm not too worried about it. I prefer Valmiki Ramayan for sure. So, those who are followers of Tulsi Das, including some of the Ramanadi sect of the Sri Sampradaya, they consider that he was an incarnation of Valmiki. According to that version, Hanuman requested Valmiki to take his birth again and represent Ramayana, or the life of Lord Ram, in language that was more conventional language rather than Sanskrit. So it could be accessible to people in general that were not accomplished in Sanskrit. Ramnagar is earlier said to be the place where he was born. Rajapur, near Chitrakoot, is also said to be the place where he was born. For sure he was born. Somewhere along the bank of the river Jamuna, and it's near the border of UP and Madhya Pradesh. It is said, legend has it, that he was in the womb of his mother for 12 months, and when he was born, he had a full set of teeth, 32 teeth. He looked like a 5-year-old boy, and he didn't cry. Instead, he just uttered Ram's name. So he was given the name Ram Bola because he uttered Ram's name. And somehow he had a good memory. Tulsi spoke about this in one of his writings. And in Tulsi Das's writings, he confirms that immediately after his birth, due to some inauspicious astrological calculation, his parents abandoned him, newborn boy. So one lady, Chunia, adopted the child, and she took the child to a nearby place, village of Haripur, And until he was 5.5 years old, she raised him. But unfortunately, she died. So Ram Bola was now an orphan. So he went door to door and begged alms just to survive. And after some time, one sadhu, a renunciate mendicant in the Sri Sampradaya line, the Ramanadi division of the Sri Sampradaya, named Narhari, accepted him and took care and trained him. When he was sometime between the year of 5 and 7, Narhari gave him the renounced order of life, young boy, and gave him the name Tulsidas from Ram Bola. And Narhari took the young boy when he was 7 years old to Ayodhya, and there he performed his Upanayana, sacred thread ceremony, so that he could begin his studies. And he conducted his studies. Narhari began the studies of the young boy, starting with narrating Ramayana. Back here at Kamadgiri, there's a temple, Varada temple, one of the temples, Varaha temple, one of the temples are on the Parikrama path. And at that place, again and again, the young, uneducated Tulsidas was hearing from his spiritual master, who could understand somewhat, but not fully. So later, Tulsidas was sent to Varanasi, where for 15 or 16 years, he studied Sanskrit and the Vedas and the Vedangas and everything. Now he's a young scholarly man, and he came back to his birthplace, Rajapur. He came back to find out that his mother and father had left their bodies. So he performed their funeral ceremony, and he occupied that house, the ancestral house, where he engaged in his narrating of Ram's pastimes. This was his principal place of residence. There were a few others, Varanasi, Prayag, and Ayodhya, but he also traveled extensively. One of those places that he traveled to was Tibet, where Manasa Sarovar exists, and it's depicted in his own writings that there he had some encounter with Kaka Bhushandi. There were 4 different narrators in Ramcharitamanas, and this crow was one of them, and in his own words, he had some experience with this crow in Manasa Sarovar in Tibet. Famous, well known about Tulsi is he had, on 2 occasions at least, direct darshan of Ram and Lakshman. One of them we mentioned, we'll mention it again. But the first one was when he was doing, as we'll be doing today, Parikrama around Kamadgiri. He, as a sadhu, saw 2 princes riding on horses, dressed in green. And when he saw these two personalities, he found them to be very charming and very attractive, but he didn't know who they were. And to his later regret, he was more concerned about staying on the path and watching where his next step was, so he turned his eyes away from them and continued. Later, Hanuman appeared to him and asked, "Did you see the two princes riding on horses?" That was Ram and Lakshman. And so he felt very sad that he saw the Lord but didn't recognize them. And then later we heard already, another time he was making sandalwood paste, and two boys came, requested their foreheads be decorated with that sandalwood. Then another slightly different version is then Ram took the sandalwood paste and marked it on the forehead of Tulsidas. Then just disappeared. Another time, I'm not familiar with the life of Tulsidas. These are just the histories as they're told about him. So I can't speak for the veracity of any of this. But one time, Tulsidas went to take part in Magh Mela in Prayag. It's in the month of January. And after Magh Mela was completed, 6 days later, he started his journey back. And during his journey back, underneath a banyan tree, Yajnavalkya and Bharadwaj appeared. And the two were having some conversation, and the conversation becomes one of the sections of Ramcharita-manas, where Yajnavalkya was the speaker and Bharadwaj was the listener, and it's recorded in Ramcharita-manas. Then there's some miracles. This is concluding. Some miracles that are attributed to Tulsidas. And the first one was, there was a funeral procession where a Brahmana had died and his wife was taking part in the funeral procession. And as she was passing by with her deceased husband on the way to the place where the cremation was going to take place, Tulsidas spoke some words. Saubhagya Vati, meaning she whose husband is alive. So the Brahmani responded to Tulsidas and said, "My dear sir, although you're a saint, you're mistaken. My husband is dead." And then Tulsi said, "Because I have spoken this way, you can be sure he will come back to life." So he asked everybody to close their eyes, spoke Ram's name repeatedly a number of times, and the Brahmana came back to life. Miracle. So the miracle, part 2, was heard by Emperor Akbar, all the way over in Delhi. So he had some messengers come to find Tulsidas and brought him to his palace and asked Tulsidas for the veracity, the truth. Did he perform such a miracle, bring a Brahmana back to life? And Tulsidas denied it and said, it's all untrue. I only know one thing. I only know Ram. So Emperor Akbar put him in jail and said, let's Senior Ram come and rescue you. So while he was in jail, Emperor Akbar's jail, he composed some songs or some poems glorifying Hanuman, famous Hanuman Chalisa. And for 40 days he recited these, day after day after day, and on the 40th day, a massive horde of monkeys came, invaded Emperor Akbar's palace, his own room, made havoc everywhere and turned everything upside down and was creating such turmoil. All of the army of Emperor Akbar could do nothing. So he went to one of his ministers and said, "What's the cause of this?" And he said, "Because you've offended this poet, Tulsidas. He's a saint, and you've offended him. That's the reason." So the emperor went to Tulsi and fell at his feet and begged apology. So Tulsidas doesn't say how, but he stopped the menacing of the monkeys, and he asked the emperor to go back to Delhi. Apparently he was in some other place besides Delhi, so the emperor agreed, and the emperor made this proclamation: any of the followers of Ram and Sita and Lakshman should not be harassed by my ruling forces. So that's a little simple summary. Obviously the whole narration is much longer. And we'll spend a little bit of time describing Atri and Anasuya, because here, near Chitrakoot, they performed penances for a long time. The place is known as Sati Anasuya, Sati in this case indicating her chastity. She's very famous for her chastity, superlatively chaste to her husband Atri. There's some description in Srimad Bhagavatam and then lengthy description elsewhere. The Bhagavatam description just mentions that Atri and Anasuya engaged in austerities, and the three personalities, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, became their children as a benediction as a result of their worship and their austerities. Long description of the austerities that he did, standing on one leg and so forth and so on. The three lords coming before him, and it was a little difficult to pay obeisances standing on one leg, but he somehow managed, and palms folded, offered prayers. They asked what he wanted. He wanted them to become his children. So their partial expansion, Soma, or Chandra, or the god of the moon, became a partial expansion of Brahma. Dattatreya became a partial expansion of Vishnu. And our dear friend Durvasa Muni became partial expansion of Lord Shiva. All three of them, sons of Atri and Anasuya. The Bhagavatam also describes that there were 7 Manasaputra, sons of Brahma born from his mind, and Atri was one of them. And it's mentioned in the Bhagavatam that the Prachetas were in his line, sons of King Prachini Bari, that we have a lot of information about. So at Sita Anasuya Ashram, the name is given there for that place. Atri and Anasuya, we heard this, what I'm going to describe, those of you that attended the South India Yatra, this didn't take place here, at least according to the information we heard in the South India Yatra, it took place in Suchindram, when Indra became Suchi, or purified for his offenses. Long narration, but the part that involves Atri and Anasuya is they were, Atri was engaged in sacrifice, performance of sacrificial rituals, and his wife Anasuya would assist him. And one of the things that she did to assist him is she would take mud and instantly fashion from that mud a clay pot. Normally mud with fire or earth, fire can make a clay pot, but she didn't need fire. She just worshipped her husband and made a clay pot and gathered celestial waters from all over the place and gave to her husband every day a clay pot with celestial waters so he could perform his yajna. That was going on for some time, but there was a drought. The drought was caused, well, we'll find out why the drought was caused. Indra. So, Atri was very concerned, not just my sacrifices, but all living entities in this area are suffering because of the drought. And so he engaged in meditation and worship of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, who appeared before him, and he asked, what's the cause? And the cause was that Indra had offended or violated Gautama's wife, Ahalya. And as a result, Indra got a big reaction. And one part of that big reaction, besides what we heard already, was he was now not properly performing his duty of providing rain. That's why the drought. So Atri asked what to do. And they suggested that, Atri, you go to the Himalayas, engage in austerity and performance of rituals, and when the demigods appear, Indra should appear with them, and then you can request Indra for this benediction that he provides rain for the area where you're performing your sacrifices. So Atri did that, and he went to the Himalayas, and everyone came except Indra, and he was very concerned because that wasn't, he was very happy that all the demigods except Indra came, but he was specifically wanting to relieve the no rain problem. Before Atri left, this is important, he explained to his wife, Anasuya, what Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva had indicated to him he should do. And he asked for her blessings to go. And he was concerned that she'd be in the forest alone during a drought. Anything could happen. And she took the position that even any separation from you will be difficult for me, but this is my service as your chaste wife, and I just have one request. Let me wash your feet, and I'll keep the water from the wash of your feet, and by its presence I'll remember you and I'll feel your protection in that way, by remembrance of you. Atri was very pleased with the chastity, power of the chastity of Anasuya, and he accepted, and off he went. So, after this unfulfilled sacrifice of Atri, the narration goes that all three, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, wanted to examine the strength of Anasuya's chastity to her husband Atri. So they called for Narada Muni, asked Narada Muni to come up with some interesting plan how to examine her chastity. So he had a plan very quickly. He gathered some other rishis, and together they went to the ashram of Atri and Anasuya. Of course, Atri was absent. And when Narada and the sages arrived, she was very happy and let me render some service. And to test her, they said, you can prepare a meal, and gave a menu of items that were not available in the forest. They had they made their order for prepare a meal with these things. So, not knowing what else to do, she said, you perform your duties at the sacred river, and when you come back, we'll have the meal ready. So what did she do? She went to the pot of water, remembered her husband, and voila, all those items were prepared. And when the Narada and the other rishis came back, they were astonished. How did you get these things? It's just by the strength of my faith in my husband, and I worship this pot of water that was washing his feet, and voila. So one of the items on their menu list was iron peanuts. Now there's no such thing as iron peanuts, literally iron. So she provided iron peanuts. So Narada had this idea. Narada went back to the wives of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, showed them out of the power of Anasuya's chastity, she provided iron peanuts. But iron peanuts are not edible. Can you three, any one of you three, make iron peanuts edible? They said, no, not possible. Iron peanuts. And Narada said, I think Anasuya can do it. And they were curious, do you think Anasuya can do it? Oh yeah, I'm very confident. The power of her chastity is exceptional. So he brought back the iron peanuts to Anasuya, showed her the iron peanuts and asked, can you make these edible? And what did Anasuya do? She remembered the lotus feet of her husband, and with the power of her devotion, austerity, and chastity, she roasted the iron peanuts and they became edible. Narada Muni took the edible roasted iron peanuts back to the wives of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, said, check this out. Look what Anasuya did on the strength of her chastity. And the three concluded, she's more chaste than we are. We couldn't do this. So then they considered, Narada, can you think of some way to examine her chastity even to a further extreme? The Narada said, go ask your husbands. They'll come up with something. So Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, wanting to, out of curiosity, but also wanting to fulfill the desire of their wives, came in the disguise of 3 effulgent sadhus to the ashram of Anasuya. She was very happy. What can I do for you? You can prepare a big feast. We've been fasting a long time and we're really hungry. So she's living in the forest, and go perform your duties by the sacred river and I'll have something. And when they came back, there was this big feast. They were astonished. How did she do this? And then they gave this condition. You know, we've taken a vow. Part of the reason we've been fasting for as long as we won't break the fast until this particular, very difficult vow is fulfilled. So she said, what's that? Maybe I can help. They said, we'll only take prasadam if you can come and serve us in the similar feature as you would have been when you were just born, meaning naked. Oh, Anasuya, chaste Anasuya, how can I do this? These are sadhus, but then how can I not do it because they're sadhus? So she prayed to her dear husband. She took some water from the pot that was collected from his foot bath, sprinkled it on the sages who were Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, and they became little children. Babies, literally babies. Goo goo gaga, you know, babies. And then she fed them as a mother feeds a newborn. And she made cradles for them, and she started taking care of them, and they were gone for a long time from their positions. Their wives started getting concerned what happened to our husbands. Meanwhile, Atri came back, having been unsuccessful in bringing the rain. So when he came to the ashram, he saw these little babies in cradles and asked his wife, what happened? What's going on here? And she narrated the whole thing and said, let's just take care of them. They're little babies. So the wives were now missing their husbands, and they were visited by Narada, and they said, what should we do? What should we do? He said, you messed up when you had your husbands go and test the chastity of Anasuya. I have a suggestion. You go to the ashram of Anasuya, disguise yourselves as forest residing ascetic Brahmanis, serve Anasuya very humbly and faithfully and lovingly, and she'll come up with a solution. So they did that, and Anasuya was very surprised. My 3 Brahmanis, what are you doing in the forest? There's wild animals, it's so difficult here. And we've just come to serve you. And the real thing is, we're missing our husbands very much. And she said, oh, they're over there in those cradles. You can just go and take your husband. Unfortunately, they couldn't recognize who's who because they were little baby forms, and so each one of them picked up the wrong one. They violated their chastity of touching someone other than their own husband, and they felt terrible. So the ladies wanted to know from Narada what to do. Very involved, huh? Narada's solution was perform a purificatory ceremony. the three goddesses, along with Narada, went to Prayag. Narada performed a fire sacrifice and told them, enter the fire for purification. They did, they came back out, not burned. Then Narada approached Atri and said, here's the problem. These three, they're pure, but they're missing their husbands. So it's only you, Atri, who can solve the problem. Atri said, no problem. Anasuya, come here. These three little babies, that's Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. And these three are their wives, and they're missing them. For the benefit of the whole world, these infants who came to test your chastity should be brought back to their original forms. Soon as Anasuya got instruction from her husband, she immediately meditated in Atri Muni's lotus feet and converted the three infants back to their original form. Powerful lady, huh? And when the goddesses saw their husbands, they were relieved. And Atri and Anasuya, now seeing Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva with their three consorts, offered prayers, circumambulated them. The three lords said, we would like to offer you some benediction out of respect for the strength of your chastity. And the request was, can you become our sons? So they agreed. And partial expansions of them became their sons. And so they also wanted that that Indra could be relieved of his difficulty from having made this offense to Gautama's wife Ahalya, offense to Gautama, so that the rain could come. And everything was nice. Now, that was in Suchindram. Sages would not only have one place, they would have other places, multiple places, where they would stay for some time and engage in their activities. So here in Chitrakoot, or near Chitrakoot, this ashram of Anasuya, locally known as Sati Anasuya, when Ram, Lakshman, and Sita left Chitrakoot, they went there. There was a nice discussion with Atri, between Atri and Ram, but a very elaborate presentation in Valmiki Ramayana of Anasuya and discussion between Sita and Anasuya. So the details are very, very detailed, but Anasuya wanted to hear the story of her marriage. How did it happen? And, ladies talking. And the details in detail. So it's one of those sections of Ramayana where the story is told again, that's been told before, and will be told again, told again. One never gets tired of hearing the glories of Sita and Ram. One of the things that Sita says that's not in the marriage itself, but she said, one of the primary attractions that I had for Ram is when, after the bow was broken, And then Janaka, my father, said, now you have won the hand of Sita. Ram was asked, would you accept the hand of my daughter? And Ram's reply was, I can't say. My father Dasarath has to say, because I won't do anything outside of the word of my father. Seeing that quality in Ram convinced me, I want this man to be my husband. The upholder of the word of his father and being so obedient to the word of his father, as she had been trained to be similarly obedient to the word of her husband. Now, Ram happened to be a qualified husband. Some husbands aren't so qualified. So unqualified husbands might say, you should be like Sita. Or unqualified fathers may say, you should be obedient like Ram. And then the children say, well, you should be as qualified as Ram, and you should be as qualified as Sita, as Dasarath. So these rules in Kali Yuga, my simple point is, there's this standard of virtue, but part of the standard of virtue is the qualified person that upholds the standard, and that rather than demanding obedience and respect, by their quality, they command it. And naturally when that's there, the obedience and respect goes. And it's different if the qualification isn't there. But again and again and again, and we hear in Ramayana of the outstanding qualification of Dasarath and the outstanding qualification of Ram. And thus, the obedience of Ram to Dasarath and the obedience of Sita to Ram. Of course, it's their character as well. But the person in whom they're reposing their obedience has that stature. And since it's Kali Yuga and persons don't have that qualification, we need another solution. The principle that's discussed for us in this regard is, in the absence of qualification, what to do. This is the whole Srimad Bhagavatam's message. It's Kali Yuga. What to do? It's exactly the contemplation. Can something be done about the chatter of these ladies? When Vyasadeva understood the condition of Kali Yuga that had not yet begun, but was coming, his concern was what to do. It's the age of Kali, it's a difficult time. And so he compiled the Vedas, and then later Srimad Bhagavatam in its fullness, so that persons who are not qualified can become qualified. For us, the recommendation or the solution or the difficulty that arises when there's lack of qualification is the process of hearing and chanting, Bhagavad Dharma. Hearing about, remembering, speaking the message of the personality of Godhead, His name, His fame, His qualities, His pastimes, as we're doing, visiting the places of His pastimes, remembering Him, becoming attached to Him, taking shelter in a suitable place through that medium of hearing and chanting. That will help each of us to become qualified fathers and mothers, qualified teachers, qualified devotees, qualified to give, to receive and to give Krishna consciousness. That's our medicine for the diseases of this age of Kali. We say it the opposite. We're not to imitate. How can we imitate Anasuya? My goodness. But we can understand a principle and try to become qualified by our little austerities, our 5-kilometer walk. It's good exercise. Think of it as, it's good for my body. Get a little exercise instead of sitting around all the time. But that's not the purpose. The purpose is sacred place, visiting a sacred place, accepting some austerity of circumambulating Kamadgiri, remembering Lord Ram as you're walking. Remember the pastimes that we have heard, the glories, the love that Lakshman had for Ram, the love that Sita had for Ram, the love that everyone had for Ram, and the kind of love that we can also to some degree develop just by these activities that we're doing. And by that attraction, then losing some of the distracting features of other things that we're attracted to, the temporary, illusory, so-called happiness of this world. It's a gradual process. Gradual simply because we're so contaminated. Mountains of contamination. Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman Ki Jai. Hare Krishna.